What do we need this set to? Plus fuck billion?
No.
Is it set correctly?
If it's not on plus 10, then yes. You do not want the plus 10. It'll
It's
be
at 0 with the little line. Is that correct?
Just 0, not the plus 10, because that's just automatic ear rate.
What we've got here is my old NAS. I built this back in 2015. It's got 4 4-terabyte hard drives in it. When I built it, I put those in a RAID Z2 setup, so actually only have 2 of the drives available for space. It's not exactly optimal. So we've got just a little over 7 terabytes, or just a little under 7 terabytes available in this. Starting to run out of space, so it's time to upgrade this. So we've got a whole slew of upgrades that we're doing here. First upgrade we're doing, popping in a new CPU. We're going from an i3 to a 1230. This is Xeon. We're doubling the memory, going from 16 gigs to 32. To go along with the Xeon, we're actually also going to be adding in a graphics card, just a little GT 710. Thing sips power. All it has to do is put a picture on the screen. We're also going to be adding an additional 5 Western Digital Red hard drives. They weren't my first pick, but they were very, very cheap. And you know what? That's what I was going for here. To account for all of the new hard drives and the new CPU, we're also going to be upgrading the power supply. We've got a 360 watt in here right now. That's just not going to cut it. So we're going to be upgrading the power supply. We're also going to be switching out the fans, and we're probably going to do a little bit of modding to this case to allow a little bit more air to get in, just to let those hard drives breathe. Besides that, I think that's all we've got. No, look at this shit. This is what SATA's supposed to look like. This is what SATA looks like. At some point, this fucker
she
just
smashed it,
snapped the fuck off.
That might be the cause of some of those errors.
Can we? No, that's on the boot drive. I'm gonna try to punch in on this. So this is, if I can get it in the shot, this is what SATA is supposed to look like. You know, this is pretty familiar. This is what this one looks like. At some point, the whole part of it here just broke the hell off. It's just gone. You know, I'll be interested to see what this CPU looks like after 5 years without repasting. So I have no idea what paste I used on this. Might have just been that extra cooler master at the time. Oh my god, it is fucking on there. Look at this. It's not too bad.
I mean, it definitely looks dry, but
Yeah, no, I know what it was. It wasn't the extra cooler master paste that was around at all. You know what it was? The stock paste. Let's talk about what's staying and what's going. So this board is staying, this memory is staying, the CPU is going. And we're going to be switching out the CPU for a Xeon 1230 just V1. I know the V3 is normally the go-to, but I managed to get this one for about 30 bucks on eBay. Hard to say no to that. It's just a quad-core 8-thread. It's essentially a non-overclockable i7. Supports ECC memory, and that's actually why I went with the i3 to begin with. It was the cheapest CPU that I could get that would support ECC memory. For whatever reason, Intel doesn't let the i7s or the i5s support ECC memory. That's Xeon and i3 only. I actually don't think the i3s support ECC anymore, and I think that Haswell might have been the last gen that did that. But at the time, I had a buddy that had one of these. He sold it to me secondhand. I think I paid about 50 bucks for it, so that was the cheapest that I could do to get ECC. And FreeNAS really doesn't need a ton of CPU power, and so it did just fine. So, however, going forward, I'd like to use this as maybe a Plex server, maybe run some jails or some other things on here. So we're going to be switching out the CPU in hopes of just having a little bit more horsepower in case we need it. I have the wrong CPU. Yeah, come look at this. I have the wrong CPU.
fucking blows.
Big thonk on that one. So one of the changes that we're making to this is we're actually adding additional memory. For FreeNAS, the rule of thumb is that you want to typically try to have 1 gigabyte of memory for every terabyte of hard drive in your system. We're going to have a total of 36 terabytes in this NAS, about 24 of which will be usable. So the board only supports up to 32 gigs of memory, so we're going to actually go a little bit above what that standard recommendation is, but for the way that I use this NAS and the kind of performance that's expected of it, I don't think that this should be any kind of problem. Luckily enough, I was actually able to find another exact version of the kit that I ordered 5 years ago for this, so we shouldn't have any issues. We just have two DIMM kits. Both of them 16 gig kits for a total of 32 gigabytes of memory in this system.
Oh, Jesus Christ, what was that? Why was this full of screws?
So the next on the shit can list is the power supply. This is a really nice power supply.
That's why it's on the shit can. It's too nice for us.
Next on the list is the power supply, because while this is a really nice unit, it's 360 watt gold rated. I've never had any issues with it. It's been running pretty much non-stop for over 5 years. This thing just doesn't have enough power to handle what we're going to be doing. So this unit, while it was good for the last one, we got to replace it. And so instead, we're going to be putting a 750 watt gold unit in as well. Actually don't mind going with gold on this, just simply because it's going to run for most of its life. I'd like to have the higher efficiency, and it's not that much more expensive than going with a bronze unit. You also tend to get a little bit nicer of units, so I think that should be fine. Yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about this. It's an old, non-modular unit, but it doesn't need to be modular. It's a server. It doesn't have to look pretty. It just has to work like a dog. So next up on the list of gotta-goes is the old fans that were in here. So there's 2 Arctic F12s and 3 Fractal Stock Series fans. The Fractal Stock Series fans were in there just because, well, they came with the case, and some airflow is better than no airflow. And the Arctics are in there because they're my favorite go-to, cheap as you can get fans. And so we're actually going to be replacing these older F12s and these Stock Series with some of the Arctic P Series fans. So some P12s are going in there and 1 P14. Just simply because the pressure optimization is going to be a lot better in this case. Simply because we're just trying to force a lot of air through a very dense brick of hard drives. Just to kind of show you what that looks like here, this is what this brick actually consists of. It's extremely dense. There's very little room for the air to get through. And so this is what it works out to be. Isn't this your tripod?
Yeah, but it came from a dead person's house.
Oh.
I've never used it because it's too weak to use.
Maybe that's why my
DSLR.
YouTube videos don't ever get more than 10 views. They're cursed.
John, I hate to tell you this,
Curse.
but it wouldn't only be affecting our YouTube.
Next in the keep and stack is the old case. It's very dusty. There's a lot of grime and shit in here. It's been 5 years since it was clean, but that's okay. It's a solid case. It'll fit, according to Fractal, only 8 hard drives, but it's definitely going to fit a lot more than 8 hard drives. I think that we can fit 13, if not more, in this. So it's the old Fractal Node 804. Just got a couple PCIe expansion bays. This is the chamber for your motherboard. If you flip it around, then you've actually got chamber over here for your power supply, and then also for your hard drives. The hard drives have a really neat feature where they actually hang from the ceiling. Let me see here, I can grab a cage. The cage actually just slots in here, and then the hard drives hang down. You can do it over here too. There's actually even an optional position where you can put the hard drive cage on the floor here. That sounds like a really great idea until you realize that if you put hard drives up here on the top and you try to fit hard drives down in the bottom, it doesn't work. They overlap. And so the issue there becomes that what I had thought about and didn't measure just isn't going to happen. So the solution is to take this hard drive cage, stick it in there something like that. Take this hard drive cage, slide it in like it's supposed to be, and then you can fit an additional 3 hard drives down here. And all you sacrifice is all of the clearance for your cables on your power supply. Why does everything gotta have goofy names in this basement? Ultrapod. Does it evolve from a fucking megapod? So these are the last parts that we're gonna be keeping in this build. And this chunk of drives here, these are 4 HGST Death Star NAS 4 terabyte drives. They have been in the system since 2015. They're up to around 30,000 power on hours, getting up there in their age. So don't necessarily trust them as much as we used to, but they're not throwing any errors, and I've not had any issues with them since. So I can't say enough good about these drives. I've never had any issues, and I know a lot of people have had really good success with them too. Again, it's 16 terabytes of hard drives. I'm not just going to go and throw it out. So we're going to reuse them, and we're going to use them until they die. And that's why we have parity drives. Dude's a maniac. Need to give him some more meth, see what he's capable of.
100% has smoked meth in the past. I've talked to him about it. And PCP.
good. We got the lines about where the fan's gonna go, and then those are pretty much where the corners for the fan go. So if we just do it kind of like that.
Inside that.
Yep. And then should we take this presumably metal part off? Yeah, we should just cut them both at the same time.
Do you want to use the saw blade?
I don't care. We can use Dremel or fuck we can use the grinder. Yeah, I say that, you know, whenever we do this, we just start cutting and then adjust from there, because we can always, you know, cut back on it. Actually, the CPU that I ordered is the wrong CPU. This is the previous generation. This is actually socket LGA 1155 instead of 1150. So the new one is in the mail, but unfortunately we just have to wait on that. So I wanted to talk about the CPU and the problems that we're having. So this is a Xeon E3 1230. This is what I thought was the CPU that we needed. However, this is just the 1230, the V1. We really needed a V3. The difference is this is an LGA 55 socket CPU, and now this is the i3 that actually came out of my NAS. So I want to show you guys, this is a really quick trick that you can use if you're not sure for LGA, for Intel sockets. So this is LGA 1155, so that's like Sandy Bridge kind of era, Ivy Bridge, and then this is going into Haswell. One of the things you can see is from 1155 to 1150, and I'll zoom in, the notches on the side actually change places, and so you can see that on the 55 it's actually lower than on the 50. I'll go ahead and zoom in on that. So yeah, as you can see, this is 55, we notch them both up, and you can see that there's a definite difference in the notches. And I think that on 1151 the notch actually moved up even higher. For the upcoming 1200, LGA 1200 socket, I don't know where the notch is going to be. Somebody mentioned that it changed places again, which makes sense. It keeps you from doing something stupid and crushing your motherboard. But I just thought I'd point that out as a quick and easy tip. What we're doing now is we're actually going to be working on finishing up the motherboard. Earlier, put the RAM in, but realized it had the wrong CPU. It had an 1230V1, which is a socket LGA 1155 CPU. Really, this is what we needed. We needed this socket LGA 50 instead of LGA 55. And this is a 1230V3. So this one should actually fit, should be really nice. We'll get that popped in. Look at that, it actually fits. Incredible. Now we just got to worry about the cooler. We'll fix it in post.
Classic. Fucking classic.